Hello and welcome back to another document deep dive. We will take a look at another Jäger-Division, but this time it's quite special because the documents are from 1945. Normally, the documents in the American archives only go, I should say the divisional documents, only go up until early 1944 at the latest. Because that's where the documents stopped being filed in the German Potsdam archive, which was then, that was like the central archive, and that was then taken over by the Americans. Now this division, the 114th Jäger Division, actually has reports in there, although somewhat fragmentary, up until March 1945, which is unusual. And I assume that these were captured by the Americans, although I'm not sure. The 114th Jäger Division was not the greatest of all the German units. For one thing, it was created in 1941 from mostly so-called Volksdeutsche, so Germans living outside of Germany itself, who often were not that eager to go into battle. So people who lived in Poland, for example, or areas of France, and Alsace, and so on. Now, this division was also mostly used throughout its life in Yugoslavia to fight against partisans or bandits, as the Germans called them. However, in early 1944 they were transported to Italy and then fought regular battles starting at Anzio. Now, in 1945 they were in northern Italy, actually relatively close to Venice, and this is where we look at the division, and it's quite interesting to see the contrast between these documents and reports compared to the ones that we are used to from 1942, for example, where the Germans were kind of at the top of their game in many ways. This was not the case here in 1945, as you will see, and it's actually kind of comical in some cases. We start, as always, with a big overview here. We start with the artillery, and as with a normal Jäger division, the artillery was a mix of normal howitzers, 10.5 centimeter here, and mountain artillery. So these are 10.5 centimeter Gebirgshaubitze 40, so mountain howitzer in 10.5 centimeter, and then lighter ones, again mountain howitzers 7.5 centimeter here. So that was their main artillery. If we look at the infantry, they were very under strength, and we will actually see why a bit later. They were very under strength, and as you can see, they only had 5 or 6 light machine guns in each company, compared to 9 or 12, which would be normal at this point, or expected at the very least. So in terms of light machine guns, they were very under strength. You can see some Panzerschreck symbols here, and some of the units were apparently missing light infantry guns as well. We will later look at this in a bit more detail, but what we can already look at now are their weapons, which helpfully they included here in a chart at the side of their organizational chart. This is something that you see with Italian divisions. I think this was maybe demanded by the Italian High Command or something. I mean, not the Italian High Command, the German High Command in Italy. So we see here carbines was pretty up to strength. Sniper rifles, they weren't supposed to have any, but they had 28. They were supposed to have a lot of self-loading rifles, which I find weird. I don't think I've seen a TOE that actually gives them that many, but they only had 61 anyway. Rifle grenade launchers also under strength. Submachine guns, we already looked at a Jäger division earlier, where I pointed out that according to their TOE, they were supposed to be equipped with tons of 9mm submachine guns, but they never really met that. The same is true here. They only had 720. And this might have been a mix of MP40s or Berettas, although it doesn't say here. Then pistols and so on. Light machine guns, again, massively under strength. Heavy machine guns, also less than half. Now, if we look in the captured section, you can see that some of these light machine guns were replaced. So we have some Czech ones, MG26T, Yugoslavian ones, which I think were like Hotchkiss types, right? And the horrible Italian Breda M30 light machine gun, 40 of those. And then also Italian heavy machine guns. There's also Italian and Austrian medium mortars. They did have quite a few Panzerfaust, and they did have Polish and Serbian bolt-action rifles as well, probably from anti-partisan warfare. Now, what is quite interesting if we look at the tank hunting troop here, tank hunting battalion. They had 11 PaK 40s. They had some Italian and some German 2 cm flak guns, and they had 16 Italian assault guns, probably the 7.5 cm assault guns, if I had to guess. So yeah, lots of Italian equipment here. Let's look at some of the reports that they filed near the end of the war. Oh, this, by the way, before I forget, this is from the 1st of March, I believe. Yeah, 1st of March. Now it's interesting because many of the orders that they received at the end of the war were basically them being berated by higher-ups for various failures. Let's look at this here from the 27th of January 1945. It says, to the 114th Jäger-Division. Despite repeated orders to fortify villages and groups of houses in the rear of the army, the measures taken to implement these orders are, with few exceptions, still lagging far behind throughout the entire corps area. Combat commanders must therefore be reminded once again to fortify villages for all-round defense, using all available resources and enlisting the entire civilian population. In particular, the construction of anti-tank barriers, anti-tank ditches, poles, and rail barriers at the entrances of the villages must be demanded. One tactical innovation that the Germans pushed quite heavily at the end of the war were so-called Begleitplatoons or escort platoons, which were basically infantry platoons that were specialized in riding to battle on assault guns or tank hunters and protecting these in close combat against enemy infantry, as well as guiding them to their positions in the night and stuff like that. There were also pioneers in these units in order to pick up mines, improve paths, that kind of thing. And now here's an order to also implement that in this division. It says here, secret. After the Grenadier escort platoons have proven their worth in the assault gun companies of the Panzerjäger battalions, the establishment of Jäger escort platoons is ordered in every single Jäger regiment. The bicycle and mounted platoons of the Jäger regiments are to be used to establish these Jäger escort platoons and reinforced accordingly. The regiment's best individual competents are to be deployed for this purpose. Every single member of the escort platoon must be trained in close combat tank warfare. The structure sent to 114th Jäger Division, Detachment 1A, number blah 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 blah, dated November 17th, Appendix 1, serves as a guideline for the composition, strength, and armament. The weaponry provided therein cannot be implemented, given the current weapons situation. Special allocations by the division are also not possible. Therefore, improvisation is essential! Exclamation mark. This includes equipping the platoons with additional Panzerfaust. So this is that document that was referenced there. So what were they supposed to do? So they were supposed to create these platoons with platoon HQ with 4 people, 1 officer, 3 men, and then 2 groups, and each of them would have 15 men, 1 squad leader and 14 guys. I suppose these were to be split up to ride on individual tanks, so probably like 3 5-man teams, I would guess, maybe something like that, or maybe 5 3-man teams, depending on how the battery of Stux was organized. And they were supposed to have 2 LMG-42, 2 rifle grenade launchers, 27 submachine guns, 5 flare guns, and 8 Panzerfausts, and were to be bicycle mounted when they were not riding on the Stux. Now, as we saw in the divisional chart, they did not have enough submachine guns, so they ordered new ones. They wanted to have 60 submachine guns, even though they actually needed 116, but they said, okay, give us at least 60. This apparently didn't happen. So in the end, as that order said, they had to improvise, and this is the final organization that they came up with, which I brought into a bit more readable format. So, if somebody is working maybe on a war game involving Begleitplatoons, this should be original research here. So this is what a Jäger Begleitplatoon of the 114th Jäger Division looked like in February 1945. As you can see, they did not scrounge together enough submachine guns. They did get more Panzerfausts though, and they did leave the huge squad size here. In fact, there's actually more people in the platoon HQ than planned. But yeah, so this is what that looked like. Quite threadbare, except for the huge amount of Panzerfausts. This next document is actually kind of funny in a sad kind of way. First of all, there's quite a few grammar mistakes and even typos in there, so I suspect this might have been either typed up while drunk, or some typist had this ranted at him and had to type as fast as possible. I mean, you will see what I mean when I read it out. So it says here, secret to all unit commanders. The fighting in the new operational area demonstrated a total failure, not only of units, but even of battalions. If, for example, the strongest battalion of a regiment shrinks to approximately 100 men and one light machine gun, loses a tactically important section of terrain, and the enemy captures the majority of the battalion without any losses, or repeats the same thing with other battalions that receive only 1,200 enemy artillery shots without firing themselves, then the leader of the groups, units or battalions are to blame for these unaccountable losses of men and equipment. I order that where serious misconduct is identified, reports be submitted on the individual or officer, and further, that the commanders exert all their power to pressure the unit and group commanders to ensure that, when the enemy attacks, infantry weapons are actually used. If the Brazilian is met with fire, he will be forced to the ground. It is a disgrace that a German soldier with a reputation would, out of cowardice, place himself at the mercy of a Brazilian. The leaders of groups, units, etc. must accustom their men to combat and make them crisis-proof through countless reconnaissance patrols. Every man must participate in at least 2 reconnaissance patrols in a week. Keep lists, always mix experienced and inexperienced personnel, and prepare well. The men must know that it's do or die, and anyone who doesn't want to join in will die up against the wall. Leaders of all ranks must work tirelessly to encourage their subordinates to regain their self-confidence. Then successes will follow naturally, and the regiment, battalion, or unit will regain its former reputation. It must be an iron rule for every man not to give up an inch. I express my thanks and appreciation to every man and officer who has stood his ground in battle. Then, on the 9th of March. Secret. This must be drilled immediately with the utmost emphasis and constantly by commanders of all ranks into every member of the division. Number 1. Constant combat readiness of the individual soldiers, groups, company, etc. Number 2. Continuous observation and reconnaissance of the enemy, including bandits. Number 3. All-round defense. Number 4. Liaison with right, left, front, and rear. Number 5. Shoot, shoot, and shoot again when the enemy is near. Starting March 15th, I will personally, or through designated officers, verify the execution of the order, either in the position or in the rear. If the order is not carried out with the necessary vigor, a report must be submitted against those responsible. Very serious cases are punishable by death. So, what actually happened then? March 12, 1945. After heavy mortar fire attacks on Capla il Monte, which resulted in losses at our own base, a German soldier with a Red Cross flag, subsequently determined medical rank of Panzerzerstörer Platoon 16th Company 741st Regiment, procured a ceasefire on March 11th at 5:30 p.m. At the same time, 2 American soldiers with a Red Cross flag advanced on Cap La Il Monte, joined by 3 more Americans. The commander of the 2nd Company, Lieutenant Poltz of 1st Battalion, Regiment 741, received orders to proceed immediately to Cap La Il Monte to terminate the ceasefire. At 6:15 p.m., an observation post observed that after American medical personnel transported some soldiers on stretchers towards Mont Belvedere, American soldiers with the Red Cross flag and 12 German soldiers followed them. A search was conducted from the company command post to search for the lieutenant. A dispatch from Lieutenant Poltz at 6:40 p.m. found no other garrison at the base except for 2 dead German soldiers. Neighboring bases therefore did not become suspicious, as they heard Lieutenant Poltz's voice on the mountain and assumed that the Red Cross flag was being displayed on his orders. The departure could not be observed from these positions, so immediate action was not taken. A forward observer who observed the departure attempted to prevent it with artillery fire. commanders, the commander of 1st Battalion, Regiment 741, suspected that, under the impression of the losses, probably due to burials as excavations were observed, the base garrison was demoralized and, after hearing calls from the enemy from their location, like "come over to us," decided to defect. Lieutenant Polz was presumably taken by surprise. Measures: occupation of the base by elements of 4th Company, Regiment 741, immediate notification of the incident to the neighboring battalion. Further court-martial investigations are underway to clarify the matter. According to current findings, 23 missing personnel. Another document, this time from the 19th of March 1945, this is the last one. Subject: unit refreshment. General: the current calm situation at the front and the possibility of releasing the bulk of the division from immediate deployment provides all commanders and unit leaders with a unique opportunity to significantly influence the troops through education, evaluate the experiences of recent battles, and conduct refreshment in the truest sense of the word. In addition to practical training, education must be prioritized in order to strengthen the troops' morale, enable them to cope with the stresses of the situation on other sectors of the front, and develop them into committed fighters, even in seemingly hopeless situations. The events of the past few weeks have, in several cases, caused the morale of the troops to appear alarming. Yeah, no shit. Not only was it possible that in some places closed groups were taken by surprise or, even more regrettably, even voluntarily defected, but it is also conceivable that in such cases, neighboring troops, platoons, etc., out of incomprehensible indolence, did not intervene but allowed events to take their course. It goes without saying that I have also made such cases the subject of court-martial investigation. The influence of all commanders, which must make it absolutely clear that every dishonorable soldier will face the severity of a court-martial verdict, should primarily aim to educate the soldiers to become a fanatical fighter, not out of fear of punishment, but through conviction of the necessity of our struggle. The unit was then refreshed. You can see this, but I'm doing air quotes. Now, this is an overview of how they did that. And what's interesting here in this organization is that the Jäger companies only had 2 platoons left. So not 3, but 2. And each of them had 3 groups, 1 to 8. So 9 people in each group, which is standard for the time. But only having 2 platoons is not standard. And this explains why there are only 5 or 6 LMGs in the divisional chart, because they didn't have enough people to man them, I believe, and also not enough LMGs in general. This also means that those companies that only had 5 LMGs had 1 group that didn't have an LMG at all, which is frankly ridiculous. This document here, where I will not go into massive detail, has the weapons for each of the companies, and it shows how during the reorganization which company got additional weapons and which one had to give up weapons to other companies, which again shows you that they had a massive lack of weapons because they had to shuffle them around. They didn't get replacements, they just, shuffled them around, so at least everybody had the same low amount. And we will take the 1st Battalion here as an example. So there was a Czech light machine gun in the battalion HQ and 3 Panzerschrecks, and then each company had 5 light machine guns, so 1 group didn't have any. And the heavy machine guns, they had 6, and 2 of them were Italian. And then they had 6 mortars and 2 light infantry guns, which not all of them had that many. So for example, the 2nd Battalion, the 2nd Battalion also had that many, but the 3rd one only had 5. So yeah, but other than that, that was kind of the organization in 1945. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.